Hello, teammates, and welcome to the Goal Diggers, a program where we discuss leadership and motivation with sports serving as a metaphor dedicated to daily grinders, corporate athletes, and go-getters. My name is Vince Velasco. I'll be your host for this special inaugural episode of the Goal Diggers Sports Event Essentials series. So when the pandemic hit, one of the most affected industries is the sports and fitness industry. But despite that, some have managed to push on with adherence to the IATF guidelines. This goes to show that sports is not at a standstill and still holds value in these times. So whether you have plans on organizing sports events during this time or preparing for when the pandemic ends, this is a great time to learn more about how you can organize a more impactful sports event. Now, in line with its thrust to providing a training and supporting the sports community, the Goal Diggers are providing a series of free Facebook Live sessions that aim to provide practical sports marketing and events management advice from the experience of some of the country's top sports professionals in this series entitled Sports Events Essentials. So for this week and next week, we have Sports Events Essentials 1 and 2 officially launching today right here on the Goal Diggers Facebook page. Now in April, the team also intends to launch a more in-depth sports management course with the goal of helping and develop more sports leaders in impactful sports events. Now the topics will cover sports marketing, events management, project management, medical best practices, sports law, digital marketing, and finally, crisis management, which we all definitely need. But of course, I wouldn't be able to do this without our resident goal diggers, Simone, Relly, and Robbie. So let's introduce them one by one, shall we? So first up, we have a managing director of Girls Got Game Mindanao, advocate Mindanao Peace Games, former head coach Ateneo de Davao University men's football team, former Ateneo de Manila University women's football team player, and a friend of ours. Let's welcome Simone Jaldon. Hi, Simone.
Hi, Vince. Thank you for that. Super great to be here. It's kind of weird also to be here on the other side of the table, and especially you being the host. So
yeah, it's new. It's going to be a lot of fun, and of course, we have bumped into each other during your athlete days, so it's nice to see you again. All right, let's move on. He is the president and CEO of RSA1 Group Incorporated, general tournament director, UAAP Football, former Nike Sports marketing head, former national football team player, and a UAAP champion. Please welcome Relly San Agustin. Hey, Relly.
Hey, Vince. It's good to breath of fresh air to have you as our host for one of our episodes. It's an honor to have you here, and of course, to everyone, welcome. To the Sports Events Essentials episode. And looking forward to sharing our thoughts and experience about sports events management.
I'm honestly looking forward to it. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. Now let's move on to our final team member for the day, our final teammate today. Last but definitely not the least, former youth ready-to-drink category brand manager in Nestle Philippines, former Milo Sports marketing head, former national football and futsal team player, UAP football champion, youth football coach. Ladies and gentlemen, our very good friend, Robbie de Vera.
Hey Vince, good morning everyone. Vince, it's been a while. We're so happy to have you on our program, and you really bring a breath of fresh air, as Relly has said, and we're very excited to share also what we're doing with not just you but with the rest of the Goal Digger community. So I hope you've brought a pen and paper for this episode, because we are hoping that you can pick up a thing or two with what we're teaching here today on Sports Event Essentials. Thanks, Vince.
Anytime. So let's jump straight into it, Robbie. You mentioned a few things we're going to tackle today. So on our inaugural episode of the Sports Events Essentials series, we intend to learn from your experience on what are the essentials on setting up sports events, coming from your own very well-versed background in sporting event world. So before anything else, guys, why are we doing this? Rob, I'll start with you.
Thanks, Vince. So we actually went on a press conference last week, and we revealed that part of our mission in the Goal Diggers is to really help inspire and help uncover potential in with the rest of our audience, right? So the goal is to inspire people with the guests that we have in our program, and then today it's really to inspire them with some of the best practices that we've picked up along the way in our sports management and sports events background. So we've been exposed to some very world-class events in our career so far, and our goal is really to share what we've learned from those experiences. So much so that when the new normal sets in, um, it's really a matter of just executing what we have planned during the pandemic.
Well, like you said, it really is about being prepared, especially when things go back to normal. And now's the perfect time to do so since everybody's at home. So, who wants to go next? Sim, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, also related to what Robbie shared, I think one of the reasons why we really wanted to do this is because we've identified also how and we've identified how what we're doing in the different roles that we have, and knowing all these different ways to do them would be able would benefit also a lot of other sports people. So yeah, and with what we have in store for everyone, we hope that this could really add value to how people do things, and really help them also figure out how to do things.
Yeah, well, it's better to learn now so we can apply what we learn now instead of just figuring out on the fly when things go back to normal. So it's really good to put it that way, Sim. Good job. I'm clearly with a bunch of experts today. Of course, last but not the least, really, like to hear from you.
Sure. Well, a little backstory here. I think when the pandemic started and this whole lockdown, there's been actually a move globally to have sports marketing professionals to actually share what they've learned, for free. It's just really continuous learning for everyone. And after listening, to all these courses I have to go through it, we thought to ourselves, hey, we can actually do this. And on a global scale, we're pretty much in line in what we do from our experience. And we felt that there was a need to actually share what we've learned, because we do things locally, to the local event managers and sports marketing people here in the country. So, with over 30 years of experience that we have, me coming from a sports retail brand, sports media, Robbie coming from an FMCG focus on sports, and of course, Sim, with sports programs in the Mindanao region, this is really a solid combination, for us. And I think the confidence is there for us to really share and, really spread the word in order for our fellow countrymen to actually improve on sports events management.
In essence, really, I know it's been said a lot, but experience really is the best teacher. And like you mentioned, the years of experience you all have accumulated together really will show throughout this entire process of our series 1 and 2. Now, let's jump straight into it. I know a lot of people have a lot of questions, but they need to know, of course, your background. So let's bring the audience up to speed. So, can you tell us more about how you began your sports events management journey? I'm going to start with Sim. How did you get started first?
Ah, it's actually by accident. Because my background is really supposedly in IT and project management, because my course was like management information systems, and I specialized in business intelligence. So if you could picture that out, it's sort of like IT, corporate, ganun, and how we're able to apply those project management principles in that industry. But what happened was I ended up coming back actually to Davao, because I studied in Ateneo de Manila, and then I came back to Davao, and then later on one thing led to another. I ended up volunteering with Girls Got Game, and then I became its Mindanao chapter head, and then I got invited to work with Ateneo de Davao in their athletics office through Coach Noli Ayo, and then I got involved with the Mindanao Peace Games, and like there were so many chances that I was supposed to like leave already. Then I became like the head coach of the men's football team. So like a lot of things really just, I mean, even if I wanted to like do other things already, it just something kept calling me back to do things here in Mindanao, and to be involved in all these different amazing projects that other people have already started. So yeah, that's pretty much my background in sports management. And what's so great is that even with my history, like knowing what I know with project management, it's easy for me to apply what I do in sports events, because sports events are pretty much projects themselves.
Wow. Honestly, I think it's just basically whatever force in the world telling you, take the sign. It's time to stay. It's time to stay with what you're doing. But all joking aside, why do we hear from Relly? Take it away.
Well, world pretty much was turned upside down when I actually got that in 1998. I landed a job with Nike Philippines, and it's for every athlete's dream to actually work for Nike. So I spent about 7 years doing sports marketing. I was a sports marketing executive, and actually handling doing athlete servicing and events. So like the Nike 3-on-3s, the Nike runs. That was all part of the package there, and yeah, it was fun. I was able to, of course, learn from Nike Global as well on how things are done, and it has made me a better person. And then a year after I left Nike, I joined Solar Entertainment, in which I was the marketing manager for basketball TV. Yeah, so another 24/7 basketball channel focused on the NBA, the Euro League, the PBA as well, and yeah, that pretty much actually heightened my interest in really pursuing marketing in traditional sports. And in 2010, I just decided that maybe it was time to go on my own and try it out. And of course, my first event was football, because that's my pretty much my passion, right? But it opened doors. It opened doors to having the NBA actually tap me to do their events. And you know what they say. You do an NBA event, it's actually the best entertainment package you can actually experience there. And having to be sent to the US to experience the All-Star game for work, to really figure out how things are done, that actually just really opened my mind into this is how it should be done here locally. And quality is always the top of mind. So yeah, so I've been doing sports marketing and events for about 10, 11 years now with RSA1, and still looking to continue on and share the passion.
So everybody, you know who to call if you'd like to get into any sort of event, especially whether it be football, NBA, I mean, all the way to international level. So really expect your phone to ring a lot and your email to ring a lot after this session. He's ready, everybody. He's ready. Last, but definitely not the least, of course, Robbie de Vera. Robbie, take it away.
Thanks, Vince. So I'm gonna borrow a little bit from Simone's and Relly's answer. Well, Relly was teammate of mine as well in Ateneo. So back in high school, I was already being included in the trainings of the college team. So that's where Relly and I got to meet each other. So the journey started back in my football days. So I think I've come full circle, because coming from like an athlete background, and then that eventually leading me to get an opportunity to have a job in Nestle under the sports program, so the Milo sports program, and handling the Milo sports event. So as you very well know, Vince, because you've been a part of the Milo journey as well, we handle very very large events like the Milo Marathon. We had events like as large as 44,000 runners in one day. We have small events like our press conferences. And the event management function, sports marketing function, has also allowed me to be taken to uh, almost the entire country, because we roll out that sports program across the entire Philippines, and it's even allowed me to work globally. Like a banner moment is working with FC Barcelona for Milo's partnership with FC Barcelona. So yeah, so I think it's a real passion of mine, and I'm very fortunate, just like Relly and Sim, that we're able to work for sports beyond our athletic careers. No, and this is where the passion is coming from, because when I was first in the job, beyond the mentors that I had teaching me the ropes, we really pretty much had to figure out things on our own. So that's why we were saying that it's critical that maybe from our experience, some other people can learn a few things, so that we can bring how we manage sports event and how we manage sports marketing to a higher level. And I think that's the goal for Philippines, because we always say this: we're very confident in the capabilities of Filipinos, and we know that sports is very integral to our culture. So I think there's nowhere else to go but up talaga when it comes to sports organization. And we're here as this organization. We want to be partners in uplifting and progressing Philippine sports.
You know what, Robbie, you honestly just gave me the perfect transition onto our next question to get to know all three of you, because you did tackle that, you have to learn certain things and you have to know them from certain people in order to get into this business. So with all your experience, all three of you, with all your backgrounds, you could have gotten into different fields even early on. What is it about sports events that you like the most? I'm going to start with Sim. I'm going to put Sim on the spot here. Go ahead, Sim.
Always putting me on the spot, everyone. but okay, what I love about sports events, I mean, other than the organizing side, is the fact that it's really the experience that you get from it. So when it comes to, even as an organizer, when you plan out your sports events, you want to make sure it's something that's memorable for everyone who's going to participate in it. So from the conceptualization all the way to the end of the planning, of actually implementing the project, that the whole user experience, the whole client experience, the whole participants experience is, put into perspective of every time. So yeah, so I guess, I mean, that's something that's very apparent, of course, in the way we do things, and particularly in my experience, like in Girls Got Game, you want to make sure that it's going to be fun for all the campers who are part of our sports camps. In Mindanao Peace Games, whenever we plan out our events, we want to make sure that they're all gonna come out knowing, they're all gonna come out of that experience remembering how we made sure that that uh, that it was also very fun for them, but also that they learn something that they can bring back to their communities, so that they can start something also in their own community. So that's just this. So for me, yes, that's what's so great about sports events, really, the fact that you're able to make all these memorable shared experiences.
Honestly, with your background both as an athlete and both now working in events, I can't imagine the amount of memories you could probably share with us throughout this entire process. Now, I want to move on, of course, to somebody who has his own company as well. Really, take it away.
Really, what I like about sports events is really being able to make the impossible possible, right? And because with experience in sports and being an athlete, we never back down from a challenge. And if client expects this, we over deliver and give them something more than what is expected. And I think that in itself is a big plus. Having to see the clients smile on their faces. And then, of course, when it comes to the participants, having to see them enjoy and actually really talk about it. But yeah, and then besides that, it's really getting close to the players in the events. I see even the athletes, like you never would have thought having to talk to a Steph Curry or having to talk to LeBron and briefing him on what to do. These are things that fanboys would actually dream of. But for us, we really treat it as work, and we've gotten used to it. By the end of the day, the event is when the event is a success. We know that we've done our job. And the good thing about it is we always want to be behind the scenes. It's never like us. It's never about us. It's always about the brand. It's always about the client and the participants. And I think that's the one thing that that stands out that makes us stand out. That we don't really share that limelight. We just want to make sure it's all about the brand, because we care about, because we're all brand people as well.
Quite honestly, it's just a surreal experience, really, to be part of any of these events. Of course, Robbie knows this from all our years working together. And if anybody knows how to make the impossible possible throughout whatever happens at the event, Robbie knows this. So what is it about sports events that you like, Robbie?
Um, Great answers, really, and Simone. So I totally love that. Beyond that, though, I think it's really the impact with the sports event, because in an event, you can really feel it's really tangible, the effect that you have on the participants, on the spectators. So in my experience, we've managed to do a lot of things, ranging from like um, sports events like the marathons. Imagine a first time marathoner crossing the finish line. He's in a wave of emotions, and he really feels it, because it's like a culmination of so much months of hard work, and you really feel that in the sports event, and not just the spectator, like not just the participant, even the spectators feel that. other events as simple as if back in the Milo days, we also were able to inspire children because we gave them shoes and we allowed them to compete in our grassroots sports events, right? So these things are super heartfelt. You can see the hope in the kids' eyes when they compete. They try to do their best in any little thing that they do. In the Milo Little Olympics, badly put. Imagine chess players trying to do their best, right? And it's chess, but they're still trying to outdo each other, and you really feel the intensity despite the kids being very young. It's the impact. It's the impact that a sports event can really deliver, not just to the participants but also to the country. Because especially in the grassroots, and the three of us here are all involved in grassroots sports development. It's really part of nation building because when we give these kids confidence, we give these kids values. They carry those lessons with them all throughout life. So we try to make them better citizens and more productive citizens. So it's also that. So beyond delivering on the objectives of the event, I think one way we can look at it is that really sports is really a part of nation building.
And quite honestly, all three of you, I believe, can agree with this. The values and the disciplines that you get throughout any sport that you take, you'll carry over throughout your lifetime. It's absolutely, honestly, one of the best experiences anybody can have. And of course, we're going to encourage anybody and everybody to please participate in any sport possible whenever you can. Now, I know all three of you touched on this, memories, memorable moments, but let's try to keep this one a little tight so I can put everybody on the spot. What is your most memorable sports event or sports events? You can give me a couple. Let's go with Sim again, our lady here today.
I'll just give you one. The first ever Mindanao Peace Games event that I joined, the first annual games. This was in Jensan. And it was the first time that I was able to experience an event that way. And that was even before I was formally part of the group. And that's actually the reason why I decided, I have to be part of the Mindanao Peace Games. And I remember, okay, I'm going too long, but it was particularly in that opening ceremony. Oh, and then some music started playing and they were walking towards the stage. And then I remember looking at Coach Nolly and I just saw him, stare, like looking in the distance. And you know how it was a very emotional moment. So from then on, I was just like, wow, this is such a powerful moment, and I just want to be able to contribute in any way that I can to this movement. So yeah.
But honestly, those are the types of moments that do stick out for you, especially in any sporting event. If there's particularly one where you feel like, okay, this is my moment, I have arrived, I've been able to contribute to something bigger than me, of course that will stick with you. What about you, Relly? I mean, you have so many years of experience. You have to pick a couple, I'm sure.
Okay, well, besides the athlete tour, so let's say LeBron's first trip to Manila, that was fun. He was still fun, and he was enjoying himself. And then, of course, I think the one thing I want to point out, which I'll just discuss now, it's actually the NBA Global Games in 2013. I think that was Houston in Indiana, or they played it here in Manila. So we had a role of actually being in charge of transportation, logistics, and hospitality. So imagine we were at Sofitel, and imagine all the players, all the NBA executives, all the families and friends of the teams actually arriving all in the span of 2-3 days, right? So imagine that everyone had to be picked up, baggages had to be had to be sorted out, in one big ballroom. All the baggages are there, and for us that was really top of our game, because you got the global guys here, really watching over us and making sure that we're following strict compliance. And in the end it worked out. And having a comment from one of the sports marketing global guys calling us actually the A team, which is really nakakataba ng puso, diba? I mean, it's really something that will always be memorable to you. So yeah, so global games and all the hard work that we put in, that was it.
Really, if I may just share, quite honestly, I know the feeling somewhat. I've had a small part in being able to be part of NBA events, being able to interview athletes. And there's just something about when somebody from the NBA tells you, good job, There's just something about it. Like you really you can't put it into words. I got to interview Muggsy Bogues and Monte Morris, and when we stuck to the time limit that they gave, I'm sorry, I know I'm adding to this script today, but there's just something about that feeling when anybody from the NBA tells you, good job. Now, let's move on to Robbie. Robbie, we've had so many events together. So I'm going to make sure you only choose one or two. We've had probably, what, 7, 8 years of working together. Go ahead, Robbie.
I think what I choose is the Milo FCB event that we had, because we managed to take world class coaches from FCB Escola to Philippines, and we mounted it in Manila and one in Cebu. And in line with getting a vote of approval from the principals, FC Barcelona really said that it was like we took La Masia and brought it to Philippines. So they were very happy with the world class execution. But beyond that, it was really seeing the kids and seeing them participate with like the FCB coaches, the Spanish coaches, their dreams being fulfilled. They're asking for autographs from these coaches. And beyond that, we took some select kids to Spain, to Barcelona. So that was a big deal for me, because it was like a culmination of like a job well done, beyond being a fan of the club, a fan of the team, and seeing our idols up front, because we were seated field side, like very very close to the field. We see Suarez, we see Messi right there, and we even got to train with Eric Abidal, who's a Barcelona legend. So these sort of events are like stamped in like our memories, and it's what we live for.
Quite honestly, I don't know how you can keep it together, especially when the fan in you is bursting out with what you're doing. But I can appreciate how you kept it all together, Robbie. So, of course, all three of you, thank you for giving us a background into who you are, what you do. But I think it's time to get into the sort of lesson plan, so to speak. So I'm going to start, of course, with our strat expert over here, Robbie. So let's kick it off first with you, Robbie. In your experience, what would be the starting point, or what would one need to know first in starting or putting together a sports event?
Okay, thanks, Vince. Maybe strat advocate more than expert, but I do what I can, right? I do what I can. So I love that. So we can't stress enough the importance of starting with strategy. No, so like any game, we need a game plan, and not just any game plan. It has to be a well thought through one. So one of the misconceptions kasi is that strategic planning is limited to business, right? But the reality is that sports organizations can really greatly benefit from strategic planning. So regardless if you're in a team or in a small school, or if you're an organizer of a large sporting initiative like the Southeast Asian Games, or an association like in our case, Philippine Football Federation, having a strategy will really allow you to create a vision and direction for the whole organization. So it's important that all people within a group have clear goals and are following that direction or mission of the organization. The strategy can provide this vision and prevent individuals, actually members of the team, from losing sight of that. So sometimes with losing sight of the objective is a waste of resources, because it's a effort otherwise not that shouldn't go into the objective, right? So that's how we always say na let's not spend time on activities that are off strat, because it's very hard enough to keep the strategy on course. Some of the benefits of strategic planning includes it enables you to envision your organization's future state. So in corporate, how we do it, it's usually you plan your strategy over the next 3 to 5 years. But maybe in your own respect, if it's like a smaller organization, just make sure that you have an end goal, a vision in mind for you to achieve. It also enables you to define your long-term goals. So what do you need to do long-term so that you hit that vision of yourself? Strategic planning also entails assessing your current state. So maybe in corporate, it's all about your environment. No, so taking a look at you're doing a SWOT analysis, badly put. So taking a look at your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities and threats, and then looking at opportunities and issues that you can help address, so much so that you hit your goals much faster. Through developing strategies and then tactics, and anything that needs any problems that need to be identified and addressed for you to get to that goal much quicker. So with strategy, what's important is that it starts with setting the vision and objectives. And I think Simone will be talking about that in detail when it comes to her part later on project management. With setting the vision and objectives, what's important is that you assess your current state, as mentioned. So take a look at your weaknesses, your strengths, what can you offer to our market? What's the market looking for right now? Is there any opportunity that needs to be addressed? Are there any issues from what's available out there that can be addressed that you can turn around and make into an advantage? So these are the sort of things that you have to pay attention to. And then use those things to guide you for a long-term strategy, right? And in that long-term strategy, that can also be broken down into short-term tactics and activities that can help you achieve your goals. So if I were to summarize, it's like a strategy simply increases your chances of succeeding versus the goals that you set out to achieve. So it's usually not the most interesting part of the job. You know how like when it comes to planning season, the interest is not there because it's not the sexiest part of the job, but it certainly makes the execution much easier once done right? So I heard this somewhere, but it really captures it very concisely. This part of the process is all about thinking things through so that when it comes to the follow through, it's much easier. So think things through, then follow through.
There's a lot of information that you share with us that honestly a lot of people can apply to their jobs today, to any sort of event that they want to organize. But of course, you apply a strategy in order to accomplish something. So we've worked together at numerous events dating as far back as 2014. So with regard to a successful event or success, what would you say would be the main thing that these events should accomplish?
Right. Thanks, Vince. So success isn't determined by the size of the event, actually. So in fact, whether big or small, the main objective of the event really all boils down to satisfying the needs and wants of its consumers at the very root of it, right? So in our experience, Vince, one of the biggest ones we've ever worked on together was a marathon, right? And the biggest one had 44,000 runners in one day. You can imagine the starting line. It stretched for like a kilometer, and then we started at 4 a.m. and ended at 7 a.m. So that's how long it was, right? So and in that you can imagine an event of that scale would have multiple consumers, primarily belonging to three groups, right? So you have the event participants, that's the primary consumer. So these are the runners who are maybe after the emotional or physical benefits related to participating in the event, right? So they may be after the thrill of the run, they may be after achieving a personal record, or maybe after enjoying the camaraderie of running with their friends as part of a bucket list, or maybe just to simply exercise. So they're after what the experience can bring them. So that's the primary consumer of these events. Secondarily, you have the event spectators, right? So these are the supporters, the fans, who are also after tangible and intangible benefits from attending the event. So they may be there to participate in like the atmosphere, the happy part of it, like the athletes village, or they may be there to just support their friends, right? So or maybe immersing themselves in like the event stalls and in the merchandise just to take in the experience as well. So it's all about addressing what they want and what they need from their perspective, not as participants but as spectators. And then finally, you also have with our part, it's the event organizers and the sponsors, right? So we also have our own needs and wants there, and there are benefits that we want to see coming from the event, and hopefully the event is addressing. So it may be as simple as generating awareness for our causes or for our brands. It might be for generating some profit, some bottom line, or even as noble and as profound as trying to encourage or getting the population to get into an active and healthy lifestyle, which is what we did back in the day. So definitely even the non-participants, so even on the event organizer side and sponsor side, there are also needs and wants that these events are addressing. And so the key there is try to satisfy those needs. And if you've satisfied those needs and wants of these three brackets of consumers, whether tangible or intangible, if you've delivered a great experience for the participant and the spectator, And if you've delivered on the objectives of the organizer and the sponsors, then certainly you can claim that your event was a success. So the key thing here is that you have to know um, you have to know your consumer really deeply, right? So knowing your core customers, what their needs and motives are, and hopefully that will help you design your event better to meet those needs, and also help you and equip you to be more persuasive in your marketing efforts, right? So the more you know about these particular parts, your consumers, you know how to market your events that you attract them to attend. So like right now, right? So summer's coming up, and there's usually a rise in sports clinics, given that parents will be looking for activities for their kids, right? So the challenge right now, however, is that the pandemic is here, and the kids are not allowed yet to be out by the IATF. So the old face-to-face model of sports clinics, as we know it, is currently challenged. So if you're an organizer, um, taking a look at things such as who will be interested in sports right now, what sports would they be interested in, what can be done about their interest given the new normal, and what things would encourage them to join or discourage them not to join. Knowing these details on the consumer can help us, as sports events organizers, to put together a particular strategy and activities to hit their objectives and yours mutually as an organizer. And there's so many examples of organizations that have done really well in the pandemic, right? So closer to home, like we know our friends over at Milo and Game On Sports have already launched virtual sports clinics as early on as June and September last year, respectively. So that's one quick way of knowing their consumers deeply, and then pivoting their models so much so that um, they can market properly, address their needs, and for these people to sign on to their respective programs. The Philippine Sports Commission has been very admirable in this pandemic as well, because they've also pivoted. So imagine, so from zero sports, they've transitioned right now first to similar to this program, what we're doing. So it's all about sports virtual learning at this point, upskilling the rest of the sports industry. Because this is the only thing that can be done right now, and this is where we're aligned in the belief that now is the time to prepare for the new normal, when we can start activating our sports events again. And definitely we can take a look at the elites, right? The PBA, the PSL, it's soon to launch, and the PVL and the PFL, the football league. So the key pivot has been executing a bubble type tournament. So, and this has been borrowed from the models from other countries, the best practices of other countries. So again, it's about knowing the key customers of your events, all stakeholders, uh, participants, spectators, and event organizers and sponsors alike. And knowing them can really make sure that you try to deliver on all of their needs and wants, so much so that you hit your objectives. It's a mouthful. I apologize, but it's very key. It's all about addressing the need of the consumer.
But of course, clearly you've been able to address the need of the consumer with all these numerous events and series of events you've planned out. And of course, a one of the marks of true success is being able to do it repeatedly. So not a lot of companies can claim sports to be an integral part in their respective marketing strategies. So in line with that, is there something we can learn from you and your corporate experience with regard to creating a sustained sports program? The key word here is sustained sports programs that our audience can take and carry with them when they do this on their own, Robbie.
For sure, for sure. So thanks for that, Vince. So Vince, we've been definitely privileged to have worked with some of the best minds in terms of sports marketing and events management, right? So one of the most important lessons I've learned in order to make your sports program or event a sustainable one is to turn it into a brand. So it's all about knowing your consumer. So from that jump off point, it's a matter of you now defining who you are and what you do. So it has to be very clear to the consumer on what need you are addressing, right? So I want to go into the discussion of best practices. So some best practices from my experience on companies who define who they are and what they do include the likes of the Best Center. So the Best Center, that basketball program that most of the professional basketball players have been a part of, and only because it's also the first scientific school of basketball that was ever launched in Asia. So back in 1982, can you imagine that? So the best center, from the name alone, you know what you're getting into. You're gonna get into um, the best experience, the best training in terms of basketball, and even the acronym of the best stands for something, diba? Basketball Efficiency and Scientific Training Center. It's amazing, right? So they've come up with that as early on as 1978. Can you imagine? And and they're doing well, right? So imagine most of the PBA players, the ones that make it in the professional leagues and the top flight leagues like the NCAA and UAAP, a lot of them have come from that program, and that's because they've established themselves as a good brand. Another one is the Phenom Camp. No, so we just had we're having Eliza later on, and through our discussions with her, their whole objective on the Phenom Camp is all about developing and providing access to world class training from talented individuals from the provinces. So that's great, and it's branded the Phenom. So it's a pun intended. It's all about the Phenom. So Eliza and Kiefer, as well as developing you into the next Phenom. So it's really great. Um, Another tip, best practice from the industry is to create branded, repetitive, and consistent elements or execution. So I think one of the best practices is the PBA, and the PBA is one of the strongest brands as well in the country in terms of basketball, right? So you can imagine, whenever a 3 point is made, right? 3 points, right? And then the last 2 minutes, right? So these are repetitive elements of execution that they've already integrated as part of their brand, and they've even marketed it so that sponsors can come in and sponsor a 3 point or sponsor the last 2 minutes, right? So things like that make the brand very palpable, and it's easy to support as a sponsor. Some other critical examples that I can mention is Gilas. You know how Gilas has their battle cry, and it's gotten the whole nation on board, right? Like the Laban Pilipinas Puso, that thing that's now a national battle cry, right? So that's amazing branding right there from our national basketball team. And then going back, basketball for the grassroots, the best center. I don't know if you've been a part of that program, but I was. I took it on later, of course. But in the best center, when they blow their whistle long, that's the signal for all of the kids to go into a defensive stance, right? So when they blow the whistle and then they do their defensive stance, that's all about branding. That's all about being different and all about being very memorable in the mindset of the consumer, right? Of the guest, the participating in the event. Couple of more examples. So um, another tip coming from my end would be try to be different and try to stand for something. So I remember there were running events in the past, like running the run for dolphins or like the run for heroes, were in when you ran through the starting line or the starting gate, there were soldiers there in salute. So imagine, so it's like really bringing them to the experience and then showing them what the event is all about. It's really standing for something. A portion of the proceeds, badly put, of the registration going to those specific causes. Lastly, be relevant, of course, especially right now in the pandemic where sports is not feasible. So again, we go back to our friends with Milo and Game On Sports with the virtual clinics for kids. No, so relevance is also important to make sure that your event can be a success. So with the whole sports event, remember it's a competitive world out there, but and being a copycat won't do you any good, right? So being better than your competitors is actually good, but being different is better.
I like how you ended that. Being different is better. So it's not about necessarily competing and being better than the competition, but being different is absolutely better. Now, you were talking to us about strategy. Why don't we move on? Thanks again, Robbie, to execution. So, really, this time, with your 20 plus years of experience in sports events management, having organized or engaged in different kinds of sporting events in your whole career, we can list that whole thing down later on, but it might take a while for everybody to sift through that because of your wealth of experience. What can you say is the most important criteria to factor in when organizing these events, really?
Well, just adding or supporting what Robbie actually mentioned at the start. No, it's really, we cannot, for me, we cannot create a sporting event out of nothing or without knowing what the objective is or what the strategy is. And that is why, it's always important to determine the strategy in the initial planning stages. It's very crucial. So rule of thumb, always align with the strategy set in place. Questions like, who is this for? What is this for? Where, when, why, and how, and are very crucial. And even like in this time, in this time of pandemic, it's really being able to know also the sensitivities of things, like we cannot play outdoor. We're restricted to doing things online. So these are things that we need to factor in, and how we can actually attract our consumer and our target audience. And once you determine this, you as the sports events manager can already decide what kind of event to stage. Events like, it can be simply put, if it's just simple brand awareness, let's do a press conference. Does the event entail that we do a one-day event, or do we do multiple days? Is it something that we can repeat the following year, the following month? These are things that we all have to factor in, because it really takes a lot of commitment and dedication and planning, to be able to execute all these things. And believe you me, man, I mean, one-day events with multiple venue pocket events, that's quite challenging in this time. And everything just has to make sense, and has to make sure that we do not veer away from the objective, from the strategy. And not factoring this in will leave you with a half-baked, poorly thought of event, and all the effort that you put in will just go to waste. So, Vince, it just really takes a lot of experience to really perfect this. No? And it's always advisable that for those starting out, sports events managers, to always be hands-on and really try to absorb and take in all the experience that you can get. As what we say in, with the Nike brand, be a sponge, right? Always just take it in and note everything, so that, because when it's your time to actually organize your own event, all these things will come in, and it's always good to have that at the back of your mind.
That's really good on how to put everything together. I mean, with all these things that you have to consider, you have to make sure that, you know what you're doing. You have to have the proper execution, applying the strategy. And to your point, I mean, I know I'm putting this badly, but you don't want to be all over the place, especially when you're coming into a certain event. Now, you've been through all these events. You touched on some of them, but what is the primary objective, or the key deliverable rather, to staging a successful sporting event? And something you touched on also earlier, it's a rather two-part question. What is your most memorable event and that you ever staged in your entire career? And how and why did this become have a huge impact on you rather?
So before I talk about, my most memorable event, an event that actually I just fist bump in the air, punch that air. I think, one of my mottos, to delivering a good event, I go back to this movie that my favorite movie, Bicentennial Man by Robin Williams, right? And there's always a line of that movie goes, "One is glad to be of service," right? And that has always stuck to me. And call it a motto, but it serves as my driving force in staging a successful sports event. It's all about service to the client, to the consumer, to the audience. And fine, you have all these deliverables, right? Your stakeholders, and this is simply to stage the event and get people to attend. But as a sports events manager, it's all about giving the audience an unforgettable experience. As simple as from the time that he or she enters the venue, going through the whole program, and actually leaving the venue, entering the car. You want to see the smile on their faces, the oohs and the ahs, the emotions, and in the end, for them to say, this is the best event ever. All right, so this leads me now. So I'll throw in now the whole Steph Curry tour in 2015, Asia area. You see, the post pillar wraps, with Steph Curry images, and then you enter the stadium with a pre-show involving Steph Curry doing skills challenges with PBA and UAP athletes. And imagine this: we were able to pull this kid aside to actually do a one-on-one scrimmage with Steph, and this actually brought the house down. And even the Under Armour executives were really enjoying themselves on this one, right? And I think in the end, what really takes the cake, right, in terms of what made this a successful event, is that we were able to see Steph Curry actually play, and that's what we want. We wanted him to play. So in our experience when handling athletes, that's always the one question that we always ask the handlers or the agent is he going to play? And he says, and they'll always answer back and say, it depends. It depends on his mood. So how are we going to, so there's another strategic thinking right there. How do we, what sort of like events or activities do we do to actually get him excited to play? So you have a 3-point shootout, you do the skills challenge, you have the kids, you have all the UAP junior athletes or mixed with the senior athletes actually there on court, all dressed up and ready to play. And and of course you have the crowd. Mo was filled up to the rafters, and these guys are just, and girls are just enjoying themselves and taking it in. So that really got Steph pumped and excited to play. And the only the dream come true for all of us. You only see this on TV. You only see this and when you play 2K on video games, but to actually see him hit those threes, wow. That's like, you got to pinch yourself, right? And we're all, there. I'm right there on court, just seeing them and just making sure, at the end of the day, it's making sure all the elements are in place. The experience, we got it. The guests are enjoying themselves, but making sure that we remain consistent all throughout the event, that no hitches, no glitches happen. And it just doesn't end there. It ends, the event ends actually when you're back home and ready to go to sleep. But that everything is still work for us. So it's a dream come true.
I honestly don't know how you maintain composure with, because I was honestly just getting so into what you were saying, getting so hyped with the whole experience. I mean, if you see him having, I probably would, hopefully I don't forget my lines if ever I decide to be able to interview rather these people. See, I'm losing my composure just thinking about it. But besides giving the participants, fans, viewers, and yourself included an unforgettable experience, you touched upon that success of every sporting event lies on a certain important factor. What is this? And tell us more about it, really.
Well, Vince, with the consumer experience already being part of it, right? The most important, the overall factor is really the value that you create out of this event. So, if the event is well talked about, when the brand is finally seen as a cool brand, sales or revenue begin to spike for the brand. So like in the case of, after the Steph event, sales for the Steph Curry shoe actually boomed. And then of course there's clamor for more to bring him back and look forward to the next visit, right? So, but most importantly, for sports event managers, it's really making sure that the event is successful, because once you stage a successful event, all things covered, it really opens doors to more opportunities. You finally or suddenly become the go-to guy or girl, for sports events management. And sports events is really niche. No, it's different from staging a fashion show or a product launch. This is something that is really focused. It's rare. And it takes a lot of skill. Right? It takes really someone who is sports minded and an athlete to actually get into it. And and overall, in the end, it's really the long-term relationship that you start to create with your clients, and that is the goal for anyone who wants to enter into this business, because staging events is not really not really constant or consistent, right? But if you're able to create that relationship, with the brand or with any partner, surely enough, confident enough, you will actually get the gigs, you will get the events. And this is something that you will strive for to actually make your business more successful.
And in a way, if you do one, it gives you better chances. If you do one well, it gives you better chances to move on to the next one and get another opportunity, because one thing, like you mentioned, will lead to the next. And you want to, like you said, you want to create that relationship, because as we know now, a lot of people want to mount successful events. And if you're able to do that properly and the right way, you can build long lasting relationships and not just having those one off events here and there. So thank you so much, Relly. Now, we have heard from our two gentlemen today. Now let's hear from our lady here, who, of course, views this more from a project and planning standpoint. So, Sim, you can compare sports events management to project management. So, can you tell us what project management is and what is the first thing someone should take into account when starting a project?
Yeah, so I'm gonna answer your question in two ways. The first one is on what project management is. So simply put, project management is actually well, it can help bring to life what Robbie and Belly have shared so far, and it helps make things happen by putting structure or systems so that you can allocate the right resources into the different phases of the project, and making sure that you accomplish everything, of course, in a timely manner. And to answer your second question, second part of the question on what is the first thing someone must take into account when starting a project, as cliche as it sounds, it helps a lot to begin with the end in mind. So I think we have to credit that to Stephen Covey, who wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And if you haven't read it, if anyone else here hasn't read it, you have to check that out. But anyway, what I mean about beginning with the end in mind is that when it comes to organizing sports events or pretty much anything, it helps to think ahead and to picture out how you want that event to turn out. And to help you better picture that out, we got to go back to what was shared earlier on knowing the vision, mission, objectives of the client, and also knowing what your client wants, whether that be your boss, your school, your company, or even yourself. So technically, the first step is actually what Robbie shared on knowing your client and whoever you're working for really well. Then once you get everything locked down on how they want things to be, the second thing you should be able to do is to be able to picture out what a successful event would look like given everything you've gathered. So I'm going to give you an example. So to illustrate this, back in 2017, I had the chance to organize the annual 5-day event of Mindanao Peace Games for college women, which involves around 500 participants from all 6 regions in Mindanao. And Ateneo de Davao at the time was set to be the host school for the year. And of course, before taking on the challenge of organizing the event, I have to understand what the Mindanao Peace Games is all about and how their leaders want the annual games to be. So we know that MPG wants to become a beacon of what is good and hopeful in Philippine sports. And that its mission, simply put, is to promote and create spaces for women empowerment, for peace and community building, and for transformational leadership through their different activities. So as an organizing group, we were lucky that it was a yearly thing and that we have the events of the previous years as a reference for how we should do things. And there are already specific activities that need to be present every year, which you can see here on the slide. So like the Solidarity Movie Night, the Team Captains Forum, the mentoring sessions, the Athletes Forum, and the Cultural Night. So, and it has already been made clear to us that the goal of the event is actually to go beyond what we know how sporting events usually are, by providing meaningful shared experiences beyond the games. So from knowing all that, I can already visualize what are the activities that need to be done, and our team already has something aspirational to work towards, which can guide us on how we do our activities or whether to add or make any changes. So then another thing we needed to do from there is also to marry the MPG way and the Ateneo de Davao way of doing things, because the MPG wants to make sure that each school who have the chance to host plays on its strength when organizing the annual games. So we actually have that freedom to do that. And because of that, we were able to add other things that can make the event even more meaningful. But yeah, so because we knew MPG and our school very well, it was easier to picture out how our style of the annual games would turn out and to actually make it happen. So beginning with the end in mind and having a vision, it's actually similar to how chess masters play, right? They're really good at thinking ahead because they've memorized already the different outcomes that could possibly happen, and can play in their heads possible next moves to reach that favorable outcome based on what their opponents decide to do.
So I think in a sort of a nutshell, how you went about this was choosing a certain approach and applying that approach to the overall way of tackling sporting events. So with that in mind, what's the advantage of using project management principles in organizing sports events? I know you've tackled some of them, but what are these key principles in organizing sports events?
Well, basically, what it does is it helps so much on the how. And a lot of us getting into organizing different sports events don't necessarily have that background on or are told exactly how to do our jobs. You know, in fact, when I was in college, when I was in school, I learned all these different things from my course. But it didn't come out naturally for me to apply it in what I did in sports. And it was only later on when I saw others doing it and saw its effects that I realized its importance. So it takes conscious effort and practice until it becomes second nature to you. But the advantage of knowing the different project management principles and applying the ones that work for you or can make a seemingly daunting or intimidating event or project more doable by breaking down the main parts of the event into into actionable items and to put them within a realistic time frame, right? So in project management, there's actually a method for that called the work breakdown structure, and there are many ways to present it, but I won't go into the details here because it can be really intimidating. But examples would be a Gantt chart or a flow chart, and you can check all those out online. And I actually have an example here of a Gantt chart. So particularly in the Gantt chart, what you can see here is the breakdown of the project, either in different phases of the project or in different projects within the project. And then you can also see the deadlines, your lead times on how long you have to actually finish a particular task. And then you can also see which tasks you're responsible for. And you can also keep track of the progress of the different tasks. So like I said, it can be intimidating seeing a Gantt chart at first. And you're like, well, what am I gonna do with all this? What do all these data mean? But it's really not hard to understand and to actually make once you appreciate its use. So it's very important to break things down and assign those tasks. And more importantly, make sure everyone understands when you're assigned to something, you do it right and you get it done within the acceptable time frame. And to me, like managing a project can be sort of compared to a machine. It can be broken down to many parts, and it's not only important that all parts are working, but that they're also working properly. And because everything's working well together, the machine should be able to do its function of like saving you time. So yeah.
You're talking about the overall machine and the things that you can apply in order to make everything flow seamlessly. And you did mention, of course, things you learned throughout college, all these experiences that you had. But you also mentioned tools and stuff we can use. Now, with the internet and gadgets that we have, it's much easier to work together on different projects that you don't necessarily have to meet in person now to make things happen, especially with the situation we're all in. are there any tools you suggest people can use to make organizing their projects easier? Quite clearly because of the example you just talked about.
Yeah, there are actually, I mean, other than the Gantt chart, and there are actually so many tools out there that you can use, and also other than the teleconferencing apps like Zoom, Google Meet, and Skype that everyone knows that helps us, stay in touch. In terms of really tracking progress, there's Microsoft Project that you can use online, starting at like around $10 per user per month. But personally, I don't use that because I'd rather like use something free, but also like it can get really expensive like over time. But a lot of companies actually use that. But personally, my favorite would be the Google Drive, and because you can keep everything in just one place. And if you don't want to spend extra on project management tools, you can actually use free templates and set them up yourself, and then upload them on your team's Google Drive, and and you can actually even edit it together with your team real time, right? So it's always Google Drive has always been my go-to, like since college to what I do now. And if for some reason you don't like looking at Excel sheets and using them to plot your schedules and deadlines and whatnot, there are apps that you can use on the go that can help you monitor your progress, like Trello or Asana. And then to make sure that you guys communicate effectively, there's Slack, which is a really great messaging platform for teams, because you can categorize your different discussions, and you don't have to dig deep into a thread to look for anything. Unlike when you're doing all the planning in just one chat group. I'm sure you guys have experienced that. It can be a nightmare looking for things. So that's what Slack does. It helps you categorize things and just really help you sift through all the discussion to find what you need. So these are examples. On the screen, you can see this examples of these apps and how they look like. So on the top left, you can see how Asana's interface looks like. On the lower left, you can see Trello's interface, and on the right, you can see how Slack looks like. So you can see on Slack, you have different channels for categorizing the different discussions. So and what's so great about some of these tools actually is that you can integrate them with each other. So like you can integrate Google with Trello and Trello with Slack, and that saves you time from having to navigate from one app to another. But of course, the greatest advantage is how they all allow you to work on projects on the go. So all these tools really allow you to observe and measure progress regularly, which is an essential part in managing any project. And you can actually use these to manage even your life. So like for example, like finding a way to schedule in a date or two within your seemingly busy schedule, right? Or something even a little more complex, like planning out a family trip. So but going back to monitoring our progress, I can't stress enough the importance of documentation, because it gives you a visual of the next steps, and also shows you whether the project is moving at the rate it's supposed to. And by documenting everything, you can also have something to go back to if you have a similar project that you're doing later on, and you can learn from what you did in the past and see what worked, what didn't, and what needs more or less time. Seeing all these apps, there's actually that learning curve, but I believe it's really worth taking the time to learn how to use all these different tools and how to use them in the right way.
Well, we'll take your word for it, because you already mentioned from planning dates to the complexities of, yes, we know it can be a bit complex to plan family vacations with everybody's schedule, logistics, and all of that, and then carrying over those tools to planning your events and managing projects. So quite clearly, you know what tools to give us for all aspects of our lives. All joking aside, thank you so much, Sim. Now, of course, I don't want people to think that I'm hogging all the questions. So we have some questions that we're going to get to from our Zoom meeting and from our audience. So first, of course, is a question that something we've probably all tackled at one point in our lives. So I do want to pass this off to Sim, because Sim did mention college, and I'm sure this is something that she experienced in college as well. So how do you manage team members that are not working to their full potential? How do you manage them?
Oh, you experience this in all the opportunities you have in working with the team. There's always that initial temptation right away that when someone's not performing, you have to remove them, right? But I think before doing all of that, you have to remember that working in a team, it's all about relationships. And when you see someone is underperforming, your social skills come into play. And you have to first ask yourself, why is that person underperforming? So it's really just getting into the root of the problem and figuring out together with that person how they could address that problem on why they're underperforming. And I think that's also a really good test on you as a, let's say, as a project manager, as a project lead, because you have to be able to take care of the relationships and the dynamic of your team, by really spending that time with them and getting to know them and understand the way they do things, so that you can make sure that everyone's working at the most optimal level.
So of course, it's not just about action and reprimanding like what some people do. It's getting to the root cause of the situation, the root cause of the problem. Now, I want to move on to Relly here, because we talked about other events that he's done earlier, and of course the highs of successful events. But what happens when your event is rained out? Relly.
Wow, that's a tough question, Vince. And yeah, I guess I've had my share of experiences on that one. So let's give an example. If I were running let's say an outdoor tournament, let's say a football league, right? And we happen to fall into a situation where there's a typhoon, or the rain, the weather hasn't been very good, so it kind of softening up the field, right? We have no choice, but we kind of stretch it until it becomes a game time decision that we cannot, it's unplayable. And I'm already looking ahead to adjusting the schedule. But as an organizer, it's really hard, especially when you have recreational players, right? You try to adjust the schedule, and suddenly some of these players cannot make it on these particular days. So I have to take a consensus to actually ask, when is everyone available? It could be in the morning, could be in the afternoon. So in the end, it's a win-win. So everyone can make it, right? Of course, there's still some who can't, but at least the majority is there. Now, let's say, for example, a big event. Let's say, for few years back when we staged the NBA 3X in Mall of Asia, right? The weather was bad. We knew it. Holding a basketball event at the music hall. Is it the music hall? Is that right? You know that the water could still come in because of the wind coming out from the sea, right? So we already have a contingency plan. We had to look for a venue that's covered, set up already some basketball goals there. So this was, for example, the PICC, right? So even if we didn't need it, or rain or shine, if things didn't go well and everything was good, it was still there. But it's just the fact that when it started to rain, and it did, we had to mobilize everyone, shuttle everyone, to PICC where it's covered. So it's really having a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, if you want to call it. But yeah, you exhaust everything, you exhaust all means, right? Because at the end of the day, that's the nature of our business. We want to make the impossible possible.
That'll be a moniker by the end of this entire session. So you might as well coin that and make some money from it. Really. But of course, yes, try to make some money from it, especially now. But thank you so much for those tips, especially now with all these events, with everything that's happened in the past year. We really have to expect the unexpected and be prepared for everything. Now, our next question is something that a lot of people are really interested in. And I want to go to Robbie here, especially from the brand side and producing events. This is something that agencies, brands really encounter non-stop. What if you don't have enough budget to run the event you were asked by your client? Robbie.
Great question, Vince. Actually, maybe from the onset, already ask upfront if you've already done the math and you know it doesn't tally in terms of delivering the set objectives. Maybe it's time for the event organizer to be creative at this point. So maybe you can dial down on the expectations, maybe dial down on the deliverables, or maybe you can dial up in terms of creativity. So we'll have as organizers to implement your entrepreneurial mindset because there can be some opportunities, especially working with like-minded organizations to help augment your working capital, right? So this is where sponsors come in. This is where like-minded partners will come in, like lending, badly put venues for free in exchange for value, like awareness efforts, right? So it's you have to be creative now and adaptable as an events organizer to try to deliver that objective because the reality is that there's not enough budget to begin with anyway for anything, right? So it's a matter of setting expectations right with all stakeholders and getting that in agreement even before executing so that everyone is on the same page. Normally, in my experience, as long as you're upfront with everything, you flag all issues upfront and you try to be as creative as possible, a lot of things can be done, especially with sports because sports is all about relationships, as Simone has said. And you can get a lot of things done just by relationships. So that's one way you can attack a problem like a lack of budget.
So setting expectations, bringing in more sponsors, cultivating those relationships that are in mutual interest with what you're doing, so you're able to execute the overall vision and goal. Thank you so much, Robbie. And of course, thank you to three of you for answering our Zoom questions. Now, of course, for those who are just joining us, they might have not caught our entire session at the start. Why don't we give them a summary on what are the essentials of setting up sports events coming from your own experience? So Robbie, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so my tip was all about creating a well thought through strategy by focusing on your consumer, addressing a need, and creating a brand.
What about you, Relly?
So the tips I can actually share with the audience is really how, it's more of executing a well organized sporting event. No? And of course, number one, you'll always have to align with the strategy. And of course, besides the process, the more important is giving the guest an unforgettable experience. And of course, in the end, it's always creating value for your stakeholders and for yourself.
And lastly, Sim? My tip would be on carefully planning your project by first beginning with the end in mind. So thinking ahead and having a vision of how you want your project to go. And second is to break that down into deliverable parts. So my example was on the work breakdown structure. And third is to observe and measure your progress periodically. So there are many different tools that you can use to actually measure your progress. Just like what I mentioned earlier, like Asana, Trello, etc.
Yes, the tools to planning not just the events, but also your life, your dates, and your family trips. All right. All right. There you have it. The Gold Diggers' top 3 tips on how to set up sports events. Create a well thought through strategy. Execute well by aligning with the strategy. And finally, carefully plan your project. So again, thank you very much, Robbie, Relly, and Simone for sharing your experiences and lessons with us. And it's my hope that our teammates out there were able to catch these valuable best practices. And now I think it's time for our favorite segment among many others. We call it Crunch Time. All right, you guys, you know the drill. I'm going to throw you some questions, both personal and professional. No need to explain unless asked for. All right, everybody. So mics on, rapid fire questions. Now, we might cause a riot in the comments here, but I don't mind. Let's start off with one of these questions first. So why don't we go Sim, Relly, and Robbie here. So first off, favorite winning moment in sports. Sim.
Oh wow. I didn't know. Okay. Favorite winning moment for myself or like in anything?
Anything. Yeah.
In
First thing
anything.
first thing to
Okay.
mind. First thing to mind.
For me, it would be Messi's golden goal. With this with when he scored that goal using his hand and like he got away with it. And for me, that's a I mean, it's not like a sportsman thing, but like to me, it's like the wow, this guy was able to get away with that. And even if like post game, everyone knew that happened, but people still love Messi even after all of
Maradona.
that. Ay, sorry, Maradona. I'm sorry. Fuck, it was
Come on,
Maradona.
dude. Get the
I'm thinking of Messi
program.
because he's also Argentinian. Jeez,
Oh
shame on
no, oh
me.
no, oh no.
Shame on
Really?
me.
Start again.
We
Keep
gotta work on
recording. Keep recording. This is
Keep
good.
recording. We're gonna put this in.
We're gonna put this in. This is evidence. Okay. Wow. Fan, are we? Fan.
Wow, Messi, yeah,
that.
Messi.
Obviously, I'm a fan of Messi, guys.
Really?
Generation.
You're up. Favorite winning moment in sports?
Winning the UAP in 1996 against LaSalle in their
Wow.
backyard.
Woo, okay. So hopefully all your batchmates still remember that moment.
Peace, guys.
How do you see that? Robbie.
UAAP season 66. So that's when we won the first of the three-peat in Ateneo.
First of the three-peat. Most difficult opponent in your playing career, Sim.
Oof. My first year in the UAP against LaSalle, and during that time there was Tashel Quiros, there was Sam Neras, and I was in the middle, so I was going against these really strong ladies, and I think for me that was like they're the most difficult ones.
Really? Most difficult opponent in your playing career?
Wow, UAP, I gotta say, whenever we play against UST. And these guys are, a combination of the Visayas boys coming from Barotac, and these guys, wow, they're strong, they kick like a horse, and wow. It's a nightmare for me as a goalkeeper. Sorry guys, but yeah.
Hopefully your hands don't hurt too much after that. Robbie, what about you? Most difficult opponent in your playing career?
For me, it should be UP. Super stacked lineup there, filled with national team players also. So we have like Anto Gonzalez, like Franco Bambico, Kale Alvarez, Ariel Zerudo. So many awesome players on that team.
From highs now and difficult opponents, let's go to some lows. Worst injury ever, Sim.
I pulled my hamstring on a week before my second season in the UAAP, and that really sucked because and my coach told me, he was like, you have 1 week to recover so you can play on the first game. I was like, oh.
Really, you're up.
ACL 2008.
Oof.
Playing basketball. So that was the worst. I would have rather torn my ACL playing football, but playing basketball, no.
Not worth it. Not worth it. Robbie, you're up.
Mine's a broken nose, 1998, from a flying elbow. So they had to like pop it back up.
They popped it back in?
Yeah,
Wow.
it collapsed, so they had to like push it back out.
All right, so why don't we go to something a bit more uplifting, all right? If I have questions here, then I move on to something that's more on the personal side here. Favorite sports film? Sim.
Coach Carter.
Oh, good choice. Really?
Jerry Maguire.
Oh, better choice. Okay, here we go. Robbie.
Mine's a little light, so the replacements.
Out on Netflix as we speak right now. And all right, so last question for this portion of mine. In honor of Women's Month, who is your favorite female athlete? Sim.
Outside of the Philippines, it would be Abby Wambach. In the Philippines, it's so hard to pick a favorite female athlete because I know of so many who actually deserve to be like anyone's favorite. So I can't name anyone.
Really? Here you go.
I gotta go with Mia Hamm,
Hmm.
women's soccer team player, 1999, I think. Nike
Robbie.
athlete as well.
Nike athlete as well. Okay, Robbie, go.
I'm staying home for this one. Eliza Valdez.
Eliza Valdez, of course. Eliza, our very own phenom. Now, I want to ask you a couple of questions here on Crunch Time, unrelated to sports. All right. If you had a superpower, what would it be? Sim.
Oh,
Remember, it's Crunch Time.
teleportation.
Really?
Jump back through time and change the course of history.
Oh, nice choice. Nice choice. Robbie.
I was about to say that. So mine is rather on stretching time.
Stretching time. All right. A couple more here. Early bird or night owl? Sim.
Night owl.
Really?
Early bird.
Robbie.
Night owl.
Let's go a little more ambitious over here, a little more scandalous maybe. If you were to get a tattoo of something, what would it be? Sim.
Um, a moon. I'm obsessed with moons.
Really?
My kids. Name.
Robbie?
Mine would be like the AMDG.
AMDG. Still good choices. And last but not the least, motto in life. Sim.
Oh, I quick background. I got this from going back and forth in Siargao. They like saying they're simple but good. But to me is for me, I translate it to keep it simple but great.
Really?
One, simple. Create the possibilities.
Love it. Robbie.
I got mine from Father RB. He's on at Xavier University right now. He's the president of Xavier University in Cagayan. Back in high school, he taught us the Latin is age quod agis, and it stands for do ordinary things extraordinarily well.
And there you have it. That is the buzzer. That is Crunch Time. Crunch Time is done. Thank you so much to our Gold Diggers for sharing your time and being game to play today. That was a lot of fun. I can't wait to do it again, especially since we keep putting Sim on the spot here. So thanks for being game, Sim, all the time. So now we come to the end of our episode. Our final messages, Robbie, Relly, Sim. Share, of course, with our teammates what you have in store for them in our next episodes. Robbie, let's start with you.
So thanks very much, Vince, for lending us your talents and sharing with us your passion to help uplift and progress Philippine sports. You know, we couldn't have picked another or a better guest host because you're such a pro in doing this, and totally missed working with you, and really looking forward to working with you even more. So thank you very much for such an impeccable job. You know, it's such an honor for us. To our teammates out there, thank you very much for following this program. We hope we sort of like taught you a thing or two coming from our own work experiences. Please like and follow the Gold Diggers on Facebook and on YouTube for more inspiring stories and learning lessons to hopefully help uncover your potential. Sim?
Yeah, thank you so much, Vince, for being here, for lending us your time as well, and again, like what Robbie said, for allowing us to share our passion to help uplift and progress Philippine sports. And speaking of uplifting, we hope that everyone listening in today would join us in helping out our fellow Filipinos who are in most need, and we believe that teamwork makes the dream work. So we hope you could join us in continuing the fundraising for our advocacy pitch in PH. So please follow our Facebook page for more details on how you too can learn how to pitch in for PH. Relly, take it away.
All right. So thanks a lot, Vince. You know, my only question to you is, where have you been, man? And you know, we should hook up in our next event. So I got your details. And yeah, for everyone, thank you. Please tune in next week. You know, March 20 at 11 a.m. right here again on the Gold Diggers Facebook page for our second installment of our Essentials of Sports events, where we dig into the experiences and learnings of more sports executives. We will have Robbie again, Nina Gironelia of StatMed, and attorney Inang Calma of Sports Law gracing our program. Lastly, if you'd like to join our exclusive and more in-depth sports events management course happening in April, please follow our Facebook page for more details on how to register for the programs. Thanks, guys, and see you.
And there you have it, teammates. That wraps up our session today. See you again next week for another episode. Again, remember to dream, dig in, and win. See you next time. See you, teammates. See you in our next episode. Bye, everybody.